And let me just do a little more of a close-up here.
Oh man.
There we go. I got you now. Anytime.
Okay, hi everyone, my name is Kendall, and today I'm going to talk to you about the BP oil spill. It was once said, when something bad happens, you have three choices. You could let it define you, you could let it destroy you, or you could let it strengthen you. Although there were many bad effects of the BP oil spill, such as the devastation of animals and the loss of money, the BP oil spill had a positive effect, which was the creation of safer ways to drill oil. Through my recent research, I have learned that 11 workers died in the oil rig explosion, and the oil continued to leak until mid-July, 3 months after the spill first occurred. What seems to not cross many Americans' minds today is the effects that the spill can have on our environment and our economy, which we are going to discuss today. To discuss these effects, we will first look at the effects that the spill has had on our animals. We will then discuss who is affected financially by the spill. And lastly, we will open our eyes to the more positive effects of the spill, which was the creation of safer ways to drill oil. Now let's begin to talk about the risk that the spill has had on our animals. Birds, sea otters, whales, and dolphins. Thousands of these animals were killed. Today, 2 years after the spill first occurred, these animals continue to be harmed. Reproduction rates have lowered due to the spill, and the animals that were able to reproduce turned out to be smaller than usual. Research on dolphins in the local area show that the dolphins are very underweight and show signs of liver and lung cancer. Many fear with these dolphins being in such bad shape, many dolphins will be found dead. Even though these animals seem to be highly affected by the spill, the Gulf has been reopened to fishing. The shellfish are tested regularly, and as long as the fish are safe to eat, there should be no problem with the Gulf being reopened to fishing. However, Bartaria Bay remains closed because oil is still visible along the shoreline, and it's not safe to fish where the fish are swimming in toxic oil. Now, let's move on to talk about who was affected financially by the spill. BP, as well as residents, were highly affected by the spill. BP's profit is down by 60%. They lost $11.2 billion in responding to the spill and trying to make things right. They lost an additional $2 billion in compensation to the local residents. Despite their efforts, many people are still furious with BP. Many seafood restaurants are also losing profit because many people are afraid to eat the fish and being afraid of being poisoned. Many restaurants try to advertise their seafood by saying they get their fish from outside of the Gulf, while other restaurants try to advertise that their fish is tested and safe to eat. Louisiana residents are also highly affected by the spill because they're closer to the spill. 12,000 Louisiana residents had to file for unemployment due to the spill. Now, let's move on to talk about the more positive effects of the spill. BP, after the spill, changed their whole entire procedure of how they approach a project. They now have risk management, inspection, and review that they have to go through. Their new plan involves containment and spill response, and they now have standards, global standards, that they're trying to achieve. As I conclude my speech, you should now know the causes and effects of the BP oil spill. You should know that the animals were highly affected by the spill, and many people's wallets were affected, including the BP company. Although these effects were very bad, there was a positive effect, which was the creation of safer ways to drill oil. It should now be apparent that the BP oil spill was a tragedy, but it also did have a positive effect. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, our peer listener, who did that? Let's go to Brian.
Eye contact is really good. She offered a lot of interesting facts and statistics, and she went into detail about how the effect of the spill kind of trickled down to other businesses.
Okay.
The PowerPoint was good. she used to quote students. You can tell there was like a little bit of emotion and like stressed the severity of the spill, and she had good translation.
I agree with all that. It really was an excellent speech. Surprisingly, it was a minute. It was a minute short. It was 4:08 to be exact. However, I cannot say that she did not include everything, all the ingredients of a very good speech. I guess the only way. Plus, your pace is a little quick, so if you slowed it down a little more, it probably would have been 4:20. I think the only way, and you were aware it was running a little short when you practiced that?
No, like it was around 5, but when I get the results, it goes really fast.
Okay. I mean, there probably could have been ways to have, let's say, given quotes of people who were, you know, a couple more quotes, people who were most affected by it, maybe a quote of like the head of the fisheries, some fishery group on how they come back. You know, you mentioned that it's come back pretty well. So you could have segued maybe into, you know, someone, and for example, tourism. I don't know if you mentioned tourism, but tourism has come back strongly. So those are the way to do that. But let's focus on the many positives of the speech. The opening, you really got off to an excellent start with your first one or two phrases that you used. And really, you covered just about everything. The transitions in particular, because not everyone has done transitions as well as they could have. So when you say, now let's move on to, that's an excellent form of a transition. And you know, your conclusion was very strong, so it was very, very good. So we deduct a little bit for the time, but not too much. And let me, okay, we got Nelson next. Hold on one second.
Here's my outline.
All right.
And
Okay. Okay. Oh, you know what, Cassie, I didn't, are you ready to do your speech tonight? Okay, I didn't ask you, sorry. I just want to, we will have time, I think. Okay, this is good.
I'll be right back.
I'm sorry?
No, take your time.
All right, let me just sit down here. All right, and once